Everything okay? Audio, video?
Yes, absolutely fine.
So respected Tushar Bhai, Nehul Bhai, Dharmesh Bhai, all the organizing members, and of course Gujarat chapter of ISAR and the almost 2,000 delegates online. It's indeed a pleasure to be talking to all of you today, and we have a huge topic cover, and since we are running early, I'm sure the organizers will not mind if I take a few minutes extra. So basically we have to talk today a lot about how, yeah. So we all know that ICSI came as a big revolution. Now today we have a lot of men who without ICSI would never have been able to eat or breed their own biological offspring. So it's really been a kind of clinical treatment for all kinds of male infertility. However, 25 years since first ICSI baby, there is still a lot of debate about its expanding use, what could be possible concerns as far as safety is concerned, concerns about the human offspring, the male offspring, female offspring, and so on. So let's try to put it into as to where do we stand today with ICSI in male infertility. The first important thing, don't see a poor semen report and straight away say, okay, you need ICSI. To always ICSI. We are very clear, as Harman Turne had said, that if you have a normal female partner with normal fertility parameters, normal patent tubes and ovulation, and if you are able to retrieve more than 1 million rapid linear progressive sperm with a good gradient sperm wash, it is worth trying to for at least 3 to 6 cycles. So don't just rush into ICSI. Do a little evaluation. It's not difficult to do a simple sperm wash, and try to make sure that you are doing the right thing for this patient. Also, only if you have less than 500,000, and if you feel that the motility is not optimal, the morphology is not optimal, or of course if it's chromia where you have to retrieve sperm from the epididymis or testicles, it goes without saying that it should be the treatment of first choice. Interesting history we have here, I don't know how many of you know this, but scientists for years tried to solve male infertility by trying to put the sperm closer and closer to the oocyte. So they started with intravaginal insemination, intracervical, intrauterine, intratubal, in vitro fertilization in the egg and sperm in a petri dish, but nothing seemed to work. Finally, they were doing drilling, zona softening, partial zona dissections, and subzonal injection of single sperm, means trying to put the sperm somewhere here. And it was a sheer laboratory accident. One day, while Bellarmine was trying to put sperm under the zona, he irrevocably punctured the bulema and injected the sperm into the cytoplasm, and lo and behold, we have the world's first ICSI baby. Till to date, we have more than 2 million babies born worldwide, and we know that ICSI is completely able to successfully bypass all zonal irregularities and also bypass the presence of sperm antibodies, sperm microsome dysfunctions, various kinetic effects in the sperm, and also we are now not only able to use sperm with poor motility, but also sperms which are collected from the epididymis in obstructive azoospermia cases, of the testes in non-obstructive azoospermia cases, and give the patients their own biological live births. This implies in turn that ICSI is unaffected by the maturity of the female carrier. Means even if you take out an immature sperm directly from the testes, you still have a successful pregnancy in these cases. Is it really so successful when we hear that, oh, giving just one sperm I will make you a baby? Do we have evidence that for male factor is as successful as it is for other factors of infertility? For example, let's say tubal factor. And here you have a large study from 2017 where they did exactly that. And you will see male factor, tubal factor, fertilization rates absolutely identical. Means even with poor quality sperm, you will get the same fertilization rate. And some of you may say, oh, it got fertilized, but that doesn't mean it is viable DNA-wise. But you get the same pregnancy rate. In fact, this showed higher pregnancy rates in the male factor as compared to the tubal factor. What about unexplained infertility? You know, one form of hidden male infertility which no one seems to talk about is patients of unexplained infertility. Do you know that 8% of these couples failed fertilization for some unknown male problem is the cause of the infertility? So you have this paper here which actually went on to compare ICSI outcomes in these cases, unexplained infertility versus not so severe male infertility, male infertility which is severe male infertility with female infertility and female infertility. You can see that the live birth rates are almost the same in all the categories. So this will, in fact, the male, not severe male infertility had statistically significantly higher live birth rates, but most of the others are in the same region. So this again brings the point home that quality of sperm does not necessarily exceed outcomes. Most of you would think ejaculated sperm is always the best. Why would you want sperm from the epididymis or testicles? But if you look at this paper, outcomes using ejaculated epididymal and testicular sperm, you'll be surprised that the best fertilization rates are with epididymal sperm. And to us, it's not so surprising because these are cases of obstructive azoospermia who have normal spermatogenesis. So you just put in a 26 gauge needle like Lupin so beautifully does at a day, and in 1 or 5 seconds, he gives you 1,000 or 10,000 or again sperms which are rapidly motile. You inject them, and you will in fact get the highest fertilization rate and also the highest pregnancy rate per cycle. And also, not too surprisingly, testicular sperm gives better pregnancy rates than ejaculated sperm. Now, this is because these ejaculated sperm, of course, are all cases of oligoacidoteratozoospermia. These are, of course, obstructive azoospermia. Testicular does better because maybe there are some adverse factors in some men where testicular sperm undergoes damage during its transit journey out from the testicle. So this is why you remember this slide that epididymal sperm will score the best, followed by testicular sperm, and then with ejaculated sperm. What about fresh and frozen? A lot of your IVF clinics will tell you, oh, it doesn't matter, you have to do PISA or TISA just once. You will freeze the balance sperm and the patient can undergo 2 or 3 cycles from the frozen sperm. Is this indeed true? Now look at these papers. Here very clearly, because we know epididymal does better than testicular, we have no doubts about that. But if you compare epididymal fresh versus epididymal frozen, or you compare testicular fresh versus testicular frozen, you see lower pregnancy rates with the frozen sperm, both these categories. Now remember, we are not talking of normal sperm. When we are talking of epididymal testicular sperms, they are compromised sperms. So here, as these papers showed, third epididymal sperm had impaired motility and lower pregnancy outcomes and fresh counterpart. And my reasoning for this is that when you use a fresh sample, process it, you centrifuge it, you will have a release of reactive oxygen. And it is this ROS which inevitably will start causing some sperm damage. Subsequently, you have frozen that sample and then thawed it, and this stress is what gives you a lower outcome. And one more paper from 2019, again showing the same performance, fresh PISA better than frozen PISA, fresh PISA better than thawed PISA, and again here the logic was that the intense testicular teasing that the embryologist does with the seminiferous tubules when they are teased under a microscope, you again release a lot of ROS, which leads to enzymatic clipping, possibility of less fertilization and conception as shown in these data here. So that's another take-home message that if possible, try to prefer fresh. I'm sure this is going to cause a raging debate, but we are now talking of very different main factors, infertility and ICSI, and what you can do to fine-tune your results. So whenever possible, try to do a fresh PISA or TISA. If you don't have a choice, then of course fall back on the frozen sperm. Very important slide, and this was of course I started doing just a few days ago because it's the first time in the last 5 years that I'm talking about male infertility. I'm so used to talking about ovarian stimulations and embryo transfers, so I needed some pointers and hints from him. And we discussed 3 categories, that is cryptospermia, virtual azoospermia, necrospermia, and of course your severe oligoaspermia which you see day in and day out. Very important tips, always centrifuge sample and examine the deposit. Just don't do a slide check and say, oh, there are no sperms. Always take a second ejaculate. Very important, and you will be surprised how often the second ejaculate shows you a few live sperms and the first ejaculate did not. Even to the extent he goes to tell me that you can even ask for a third ejaculate, of course, if the man is an iron man and capable of it, and that also often reveals sperm. In necrozoospermia, of course, we know TISA sometimes reveals better DNA or motile sperm, but just imagine if you do all these 3 steps, you save a lot of patients and unnecessary testicular aspiration of sperm. Even when you see reports of terato, don't take them at face value. Most of the time, these reports, in almost 80 to 90% of cases, you will find normal sperm with a careful search. What you need to make sure is that you identify sperms with a head, which is picked up for injection, and you could ignore a few tail or piece anomalies. Of course, remember, Pinheads don't give you pregnancies, and even round heads give very few pregnancies. Is bad sperm capable of giving you a good embryo? Beautiful study here which compares the outcomes of sperm taken from azoospermic patients, cryptozoospermic patients, and necrozoospermic patients. And on the other hand, the best possible control that you could have is by using proven fertility donor sperm on sibling oocytes of the same patient. So you have 20 oocytes from the wife, 10 are injected with the bad sperm from the husband, 10 are injected with proven fertile donor sperm. And of course, as expected, in these bad cases, the sperm will produce a lower fertilization rate, as you can see 65 versus 83, 65 versus 75 and so on. But the rate of resultant good quality embryo was not different. Now this is the important point, that pregnancy rates are on par, everything else seems to be on par once you get good quality embryos, but you will definitely have lower fertilization rates in these patients. So the study observations even here, as I told you earlier, careful examination of centrifuge sperm from two ejaculates, which will be suitable and will take a lot of unnecessary TISAs. Even in necrozoospermia, very often sperm can be isolated, and this is important because we don't want to do unnecessary TISAs. So this is a very important point here, that just because you see bad sperm or all immotile sperm, or in case with two previous reports showing no sperm, you just have to directly plan a TISA. That is not true. Always collect two ejaculates on the day of the procedure. Another very interesting category is, as I told you earlier, patients who have an unexplained male factor. So they have normal semen reports, normal sperm counts, normal morphology, but when they do an IVF, classic IVF, none of the eggs fertilize. Now here, a lot of our clinics do what is called a rescue ICSI. And everybody has this mental perception that rescue ICSI is not successful. I agree, partly because when you do a rescue ICSI, the next day you have lost a 24-hour period, which definitely affects the window of implantation. You get a good quality embryo, but because you are 24 hours late for that stage of embryo, you could not get a pregnancy. So the trick here is to do a freeze-all, do a rescue ICSI, pick the embryos, don't transfer them fresh, and transfer them in the next cycle. We've been doing this for the last 5 years with the same pregnancy rate as your normal IVF patients. To drive the point, classic study again, where they evaluated rescue ICSI, you can see 505 couples who had good fertilization rates when they were checked at 3 hours. 100 patients who had total fertilization failure when the oocytes were checked after 3 to 4 hours of examination. So they had to undergo rescue ICSI. Of course, this was an early ICSI on the same day and not the next day. And you had the conventional 4,900 couples who had IVF with overnight incubation and had good fertilization of their oocytes. Again, you can see traditional versus short-term versus rescue. You have the same clinical pregnancy rate in all three categories. So if you see a fertilization, don't panic, don't think it's the end of the world. In fact, you should relax, that we just need to do a rescue ICSI and you will get the same outcome. So this is another important area of male infertility, totally not spoken of except in IVF clinics. Then just because we have a normal sperm report, you assume they are normal and then you up with a fertilization failure, and then retrospectively you find out that, oh, she was a case of unexplained or male factor infertility. We have heard excellent presentations already on DNA fragmentation, but a few things need to be put into clinical perspective. We know that there's a high incidence of DNA fragmentation, especially in patients of unexplained infertility. These sperm will have adverse consequences. More than 30% of men undergoing ICSI will show you high DNA fragmentation. This in turn will cause reduced fertilization rates, impaired embryo development, higher incidence of early pregnancy losses. But the important things to remember, this might be a repetition from the other speakers. The first paper was in 2000 when it was said that if you have more than 27% of sperm show the DNA fragmentation, irrespective of normal sperm parameters, will not get a clinical pregnancy. We have so many methods, but unfortunately there is too much variability. In the same man, one test may show a positive result, the other test may show a negative result, and so on. And that is why it's not very inclusive, there are no definite cutoffs. And which is why DFI is not yet a routine first class for all male factor. But three important categories of which I personally strongly recommend DFI testing is unexplained infertility, recurrent IVF ICSI failures for some unknown reason, and some cases of recurrent miscarriages. Of course, when you have increased DNA fragmentation, there is no doubt XC is superior to IVF. This was the first paper almost 14 years ago in 2007, and more is. You saw this meta-analysis where typically most of the live birth rates are better and in favor of low DNA fragmentation, that all of you know. But when they corrected for female factors, initially they thought both IVF and ICSI, it's the same and doesn't make a difference. But when they corrected for female factors, they found that ICSI helps to bring all the graft to the left side again. That means even with high DNA fragmentation, use of ICSI in IVF will restore good pregnancy rates back to the normal level. And the biggest question we have now is, in cases with persistent high DFI, every time you do a DFI it is more than 30%, should you use testicular sperm or should you use ejaculated sperm for ICSI? Esther's first paper, 2015, you clearly see when you use testicular sperm, you have an 80% reduction in the percentage of sperms having sperm DNA fragmentation. So it's a very important point here. Also, this next large study which came again showed clinical pregnancy rate much better with testicular sperm. Miscarriages significantly reduced incidence with testicular sperm and much better live birth rate with testicular sperm as against ejaculated sperm. What about testicular versus ejaculated? Again, you can see all the meta-analysis in favor of testicular sperm with ICSI. And again, this paper from 2018, which concluded that the use of testicular sperm for ICSI significantly increases pregnancy rates and live birth rates in patients with a high sperm DNA fragmentation. Excuse me, somebody's audio is on. Can you please mute all the others? Thank you. And here, then we have Dr. Nagori, please mute. So then, of course, there was a bit of a controversy. The patients where you have high sperm DNA fragmentation, they have higher aneuploidy rates of chromosomes 13, 18, 21, Why? But again, to counter this, when they changed the method of testing for aneuploidies, they in fact found the reverse. So until now, we have been taught patients who have a higher STF have a lower DNA damage in testicular sperm but higher aneuploidy rates. When you change the method of testing aneuploidy, it has now shown the converse, that there is a higher rate of aneuploidy in ejaculated sperm rather than testicular sperm. So this is an interesting area for further research. So the take-home message is for STF. The first step, of course, should be treating the high sperm DNA fragmentation, so your antioxidants, varicocele surgeries, and so on. You also have to consider the possibility of aneuploidy and lack of standardized protocols to assess STF. There is urgent need for strong evidence to determine which treatment will really benefit from testicular aspiration rather than ejaculated sperm. Current evidence suggests that testicular sperm is better in patients with high DFI. Of course, you have to use all your usual treatment procedures, the usual antioxidant treatments. Personally, I prefer a combination of ubiquinol and 40 milligrams resveratrol for at least 72 to 90 days, and then try to get improved sperm motility for ICSI. Controversial areas, I'm sure Suresh will definitely touch on these. One is IMSI. There was initial papers which said that you will have better pregnancy rates, but this paper from 2013 which said that the routine use of IMSI may not be indicated in all cases of severe male fertility. And also PICSI, that is physiological ICSI versus conventional ICSI. This systematic review showed no statistically significant difference on birth rates or clinical pregnancy rates. So of course, I'll leave it to Sudesh. And finally, we have to, of course, with which is a major chunk of our ICSI cases, and that is azoospermic men. This is, of course, you all know the definition of azoospermia. You have wonderful lectures by Rupin and Morning. The differences between obstructive and non-obstructive azoospermia. But from ICSI point of view, we have PISA for obstructive azoospermia patients. We have PISA if PISA fails to give a semen sample in obstructive azoospermia, or if there is complete epididymal agenesis, so you can't put the needle in, or if there is a favorable testicular histopathology in cases of non-obstructive azoospermia, or the patient has previously had success with PISA. And only if this fails, it's a very bad case of non-obstructive azoospermia, then we have to consider microcircular testicular sperm extraction, which is micro-TSA, of course, using a microscope. So here you can see how simply Rupin does ICSI. You just inject the local, and I'm sure has already shown you this, put in a 26 gauge needle, and within 3 or 4 minutes they are able to get a good sperm for ICSI. Now another important point here, I am not saying that every patient of obstructive azoospermia should go for ICSI straight away. You must, as andrologists, explore the possibility of VEA and other options. Please remember, a patient always prefer natural conception as against the painful IVF or ICSI cycle. Also, the advantages of VA have to be considered, that you will have a 60% chance of having sperm in 6 to 12 months, 30 to 40% chance of a natural pregnancy, the second and third child is free, and so on. ICSI, of course, has its own advantages that there is no surge involved, 50% chance of live birth, but of course there are expensive hormones for a normal female partner to be taken. So where ICSI would be preferred as first choice, you have a healthy couple with a poor ovarian reserve with no time on hand, couple is in an extreme pregnancy, or if the case is unfit for surgery as has been discussed by speakers. Testicular sperm aspiration, again, this is the conventional one, which is very easy to do. Most patients would get sperm just with conventional TISA, and everybody doesn't need to go for micro TISA, where we know it is more accurate, you avoid damage to the blood vessels, lower chances of hematoma, and better identification of healthy pupils, better sperm quality. Very important, interesting slide here. Please remember that even if a patient comes to you with a previous report showing testicular biopsy did not have sperm, please remember 20 to 25% of men who have a histopathological diagnosis of Sertoli cell only syndrome, 35% of men who have a diagnosis of maturation errors, more than 90% of who have a report of severe hypospermatogenesis would still have sperm retrieved for TISA. So based on a single biopsy report, please don't write off a patient and say that you will not have sperm. Micro TISA, of course, we know that there are a lot of advantages. I already mentioned a few of them earlier, that you can identify the blood vessel well and avoid any damage or hematoma. And you can also find out the area which has the best seminiferous tubules, nice, opaque, thick, swollen tubules, which are likely to give you viable sperm. Again, you can see, especially in these difficult cases, previous chemotherapy, Klinefelter, split torturism, ASLF deletions, and so on. The sperm retrieval rate per patient is excellent, pregnancy rates also excellent with micro TISA and ICSI. So conclusions, micro TISA was very effective. You can expect 100% in hypospermatogenesis, 60% sperm recovery, drip tokenism, 12% in Sertoli cell, and of course 0% is spermatogenic arrest. Most important slide, if you are doing a micro TISA, you need a very high level of commitment by the clinician and the embryologist. Total commitment, understanding and willingness of the husband to undergo procedure which may not give good sperms or good outcomes. Most important, and this is where all clinics lack nowadays, is the time commitment. You need a search time of 3 to 4 hours, often by multiple embryologists, and only to have all these infrastructure and facilities is it worth doing micro TISA. Otherwise, again, you end up with the same frustrating result that there were no sperms and no pregnancy. Of course, there are no cutoffs for case selection and so on. And this is another very important study again to show you ICSI outcomes in patients with severe male infertility. So you can see here in this study that the longer the time, this is of course the minutes for which the sperm and the ejaculate and the testicular samples had to be screened and searched before sperms were found. You can find that with ejaculate sperm, the green bars, you have good pregnancy rates even if you find sperms after 3 hours of searching. With testicular sperm, surprisingly, the longer the search time, the lower is the pregnancy rate, but it is very good at 24% even after 3 hours of search time. So please make sure you have the infrastructure in place to do a good micro TISA. Also remember that even in micro TISA patients, always take ejaculates in the morning, because 10% of men will show sperm in the ejaculate on that day, and avoid unnecessary testicular aspiration. Also, 70% of these men with severe male infertility requiring micro TISA will have abnormal genotypes, so you have to be aware of that too. And since time is a little short, of course, you saw they needed 3 ICSI operators and sometimes 8 additional embryologists in order to be able to find even 2 or 3 sperms and give a biological live birth. I included these slides just for everyone who is of the clinician or the gynecologist, and we know that a lot of clinics do ICSI for all. But please remember, this is not good practice. We have a lot of data that ICSI results in fewer live births than conventional IVF, say for case of tubal factor. I'm not talking of male factor. Here also you can see IVF does much better than ICSI in terms of blastulation rates, and you get pregnancy rates than ICSI in couples with non-male factor. So it's very important that there are risks. We know it's time consuming, there are temperature pH fluctuations, there is exposure to chemicals, higher costs. So please, there is no need to do ICSI for all patients. If the patient has a good sperm, proven fertility, conventional IVF is equally good or better. And finally, of course, to end with the concerns and the outcomes, original Belgium paper, all of us know this paper, pregnancy rates are excellent at 50% and so on. What we were more worried was congenital anomalies, but again, we have enough publications now that the anomaly rate and malformation rate with ICSI is the same or even less than IVF in some patient populations. Also, we need to remember that the new parameters of the infants conceived are not different. So, although live birth rate after sperm injections in patients of testicular failure are lower at 20% compared to 40%, 35% with azoospermia, the kids which are born are absolutely normal. Even in Klinefelters, this paper from 2014, 65 azoospermic patients with non-mosaic Klinefelter, sperm was recovered in almost 40% of patients. They had 17 newborns, all were normal, and very reassuring that men with Klinefelter have no increased risk of transmitting their genetic problem to the offspring. So safety, of course, since we are totally bypassing nature's consideration, we are always worried about the growth, cognitive development, and postnatal well-being of the offspring. We have enough studies, fortunately now, to show us that they are satisfactory physical and psychological development. The kids are normal. What about offspring with strong Y here? Again, the survey showed that even when you look at their male reproductive hormones of young ICSI men, they proved to be comparable to naturally conceived other children. And although they were slightly short of the WHO criteria, they were not in the total infertile range. And this is reassuring because we had a lot of the men of these, the children of these men would have severe fertility issues. Even female offspring, comparable hormone profile to naturally conceived girls, so no concerns over there too. The future management, non-obstructive azoospermia, of course, all of you keep reading about stem cell transplants, embryonic stem cells, on gene therapy. I wish all this is available to us soon. And just to end, very important point here, because this was a huge meta-analysis where they did a systematic review as to what should be done. Should we inject immature oocytes? Why do oocytes degenerate? When should we inject the egg? Where should be the polar body during injection? Zona-free oocytes, fertilizer, so on. And the recommendations are that injection of rescue metaphase 1 oocytes should be discouraged because of high aneuploidy rates. Laser-assisted ICSI can be an efficient method to solve the high oocyte degeneration rate which sometimes occurs in ICSI. Optimal ICSI timing and the best polar body position during injection have not yet been clarified. Injected zona-free oocytes, if handled carefully, can develop to blastocyst and implant. Efficient options can be offered to patients of fertilization failure in previous conventional ICSI cycles. Again, repeat, the biggest challenge for the future is we still don't have the best method to select the best sperm when only immotile sperm are available for ICSI. We don't have any reliable method to completely filter out sperm with fragmented DNA from any generate. Most studies do not report essential clinical outcomes, which are very important to finally establish the safety of a procedure. So thank you once again to Mehul Bhai, the whole team of Gujarat Isar chapter. I apologize, I had to wash out the time a bit, but